basically have two memory systems in the brain and body. We have what's called an explicit memory system, or declarative memories. Declarative memories are just memories that you can declare. They're made up of things that you learn semantically, knowledge, facts, philosophy, theory, and experience, events that take place in your life. And that's the autobiographical self. So you can declare it. I know I'm a man. I know I pay taxes. I know the size shoe I wear. I know how many kids I have. I know what I do. I know what I learned. And that becomes the declarative autobiographical self. But when we do something enough times over and over again, we neurochemically condition the body to memorize that as well as the conscious mind. And once the body knows as well as the mind, that's called a habit. The habit is when the body is the mind. Now that activates what's called the non-declarative memory system, which means I've done it so many times I don't have to think about it anymore. There's no conscious awareness. Now your body is your unconscious mind. It's the servant to the master. And we can condition it to become the master. It can memorize a set of emotional reactions and behaviors and beliefs. It can memorize a set of conditions and skills so well that it becomes second nature. Now 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old sits in a subconscious memory system in which the body now is the mind. So how awake are we? So the word meditation, the actual translation of the word meditation, the Tibetan translation literally means to become familiar with, to make known, to become aware. So if you are sitting with your eyes closed and eliminating the typical stimulation that you typically can predict in your life, and the environment's no longer causing you to think, and you're sitting there and you're observing your thoughts and you're paying attention to them, that metacognitive function in neuroscience, your ability to observe and become familiar with your unconscious thoughts, your unconscious behaviors, and your unconscious sentiments and make them conscious, is what meditation is. You're becoming familiar. You're going into the operating system of the subconscious, and you're bringing it up into your level of awareness so that no thought, no emotion, no behavior goes by unchecked or unnoticed by you. Now, that begins to make the first change. Now, meditation, by definition, to become familiar with, what if you said, well, now that I'm so aware of this part of myself that I no longer want to be, and by the way, if you can observe those programs, you're beginning to objectify your subjective mind, because if you're observing them, you're no longer them. And that process of objectifying it allows us to become separate from it. That's what the first process of change. But what if you said, what is a greater expression of myself that I can be? And as you began to think about and actually answer that question, contemplate a new way of being, you would begin to make your brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And the fact that you're able to make your brain work differently means you're changing your mind. Mind is the brain in action. Mind is the brain at work. So you begin to reproduce a whole new level of mind. Now, the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. The more you do it, the more familiar you become with it. But it's not enough to stop there. It just can't be an intellectual process. It's got to drop about 10 inches from your head to your heart. And the moment your body begins to emotionally embrace that new you, as the moment your body begins to get the emotional signal because you're so focused on what you're doing, the thought that you're thinking in your forebrain literally becomes the experience. The end product of an experience is called an emotion. And your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's in that future event now. In other words, your body can't tell the difference between the actual event emotionally and what you're experiencing because you're fabricating it from within. The moment that happens, your body is literally getting signaled neurologically, chemically, genetically. You're literally changing your physiology. And if you can allow it to move into the body and you can memorize that feeling until it becomes familiar, and you get up when your mind and body are working together, you are in a whole new state of being. Being is when mind and body are working together, when thoughts and feelings are aligned. Most people, they live in duality. They think positively, but they feel negatively. They want wealth, but they feel poor. They pray for a new life, but they feel guilty. That's mind and body in opposition. We have to recondition the body to a new mind. And when it can become so familiar that we've unlearned something about our old self, we've got to give that up, and then relearn something new, break the habit of the old self and reinvent a new self, to prune synaptic connections in neuroscience and sprout new connections, to unmemorize emotion that's actually stored in the body, then recondition the body to a new mind and to a new emotion, requires basically you losing your mind and creating a new one. Now, most people, when they break that chemical continuity of familiarity that they've grown so accustomed to by the time they're 35 years old, that discomfort causes them to crave the emotion that they're addicted to, and they return back to the same self. Great people in history understood that, and they went on in spite of it. And because we can be uncomfortable and be okay with it, and know that we're actually going to wind up on a new horizon, we're going to wind up in a new land, we're going to break free from this. It's difficult because as you're in the process, you're looking for some agreement somewhere to let you know that you're doing okay, because you're breaking all your agreements emotionally with everybody in your life and everything in your life, and emotion is energy. So you're fundamentally breaking the energy to every known thing in your life, and just like a sodium molecule bonds to a chloride molecule, there's a bond that takes place energetically beyond space and time. Well, as you begin to change and you begin to break that emotional connection, you're literally snapping energy. And that discomfort then causes the body to go into chaos. It's when people return back to the same relationship or the same job or the same circumstances, and that feels right to them. Well, it's only feeling right because it's feeling familiar. To live in the unknown, to live in the uncertainty now, the quantum model of uncertainty, to be out on that limb is the only place where the uncommon actually happens. That's where the things get weird and wacky and wild, and it takes a little bit of letting go of what you think it should be and being willing to be out in that deep water for a long time, because energy will reconform to that new mind. Now, most people, if you think about this, they when they run back to the familiar, then it's over. But if you're actually engaged in the process, it would make sense to remind yourself every day who you no longer want to be, and remind yourself who you do want to be. That's meditation. That's demystifying it to the simplest fashion, to get beyond the analytical mind and begin to have a future intention that's no longer connected to the emotions of the past. And when you're able to do that, then the universe then begins to conspire in those new and unusual ways, and now your internal state is actually producing effects in the external state. And quantum model says the environment is an extension of your mind. You change your mind, your life changes.